Welcome everyone. Welcome to yet another supremely amazing session on BioPoint. Stream the world of bio for NEET with yet another supremely amazing chapter of your class 12 for NEET 2021 batch on the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants Part 1. So we have a limited time only, so I'll be going with a couple of chapters altogether. Hope you will cope up with that, and if you have any doubt, please do comment us in the comment section, or you can tell us directly on the Telegram, and the link will be at BioPoint New, where we conduct regular discussion, polls, quizzes, updates on our classes, and OMR examinations. So you can contact us directly using this Telegram group. Those who are watching the session, don't forget to hit the like button, do share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and leave the comments about the session on the wonderful comment section after this class gets over on your favorite BioPoint. Stream the world of bio for NEET. This is a crash course for NEET 2021. So do join our Telegram group to know more about the crash course at BioPoint New. This is a link of our Telegram group. So without wasting any more time, let's move on to this chapter of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. And first we are going to discuss about the parts of a flower. So flower means it is actually the modified shoot. Flower is actually the modified shoot. Suppose a flower, you have to understand that a flower mainly consists of two main parts. That is, it consists of essential whorls and it consists of non-essential whorls. Okay, a flower mainly consists of essential whorls and non-essential whorls. The essential whorls are also known as the reproductive part of a flower. The essential whorls of a flower are also known as the reproductive part of a flower. For example, you will have the Androecium, which is the male reproductive whorl, consisting of individual units, which is known as stamen. It has subparts, which we will discuss in detail. So Androecium is the first essential part of the flower, that is a male reproductive whorl, and gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower that consists of individual units called carpels. Clear? And the non-essential whorls are the green colored covering, that is the sepals, and the brightly colored area, that is the petals. Okay, the sepals and petals are the non-essential whorls of the flower, and Androecium and gynoecium are the essential whorls of a flower. So a flower is a modified shoot which develops from the floral primordia. Statement question for NEET 2016. Phase 1. Okay, flower is a modified shoot that develops from the floral primordia, and this floral primordia first develops into a bud-like structure and then only it will develop into a flower. So this flower is known as the reproductive part of the plant. MCQ question. Modified shoot arising from the floral primordia. MCQ number 1. Reproductive part of a flower. MCQ number 2. Androecium is the male reproductive part. Androecium is the male reproductive part that consists of individual units. What are stamens? Stamens are the individual units of Androecium, and the last part is the gynoecium, that is the female reproductive part of a flower that consists of individual units, which is known as the carpel. That is known as the carpel. So let's check in detail. So guys, the green colored portion you will call it as the calyx, and the individual units of calyx you will call it as the sepal. For example, when the flower, we already studied that a flower develops from the floral primordia, and the floral primordia will firstly be a bud. The floral primordia will be firstly a bud, that would be enclosed by a green covering, and that green covering that protects the flower during the bud stage is known as the calyx. So calyx protects, okay, calyx protects the flower during bud stage. Calyx protects the flower during the bud stage. So next is the corolla. It's not corona, it is corolla. What do you mean by corolla? Sorry. Corolla means the colored, the brightly colored part of the flower, which is the individual units. You will call it as the petals. Okay. Next, you have the anther, which is the part of the male reproductive system, that is a stamen, consists of two main parts, filament and anther. And you have the gynoecium, carpel, stigma, style, and ovary are the different parts of gynoecium. Is that clear? Yes, I hope each and every part of the diagram is clear. Let's move forward. So pre-fertilization events. Pre-fertilization event means all those events that happens before fertilization. What do you mean by fertilization? Come and me. What do you mean by fertilization? What do you mean by fertilization? Fertilization. What do you mean by fertilization? It is actually the fusion of the male gametes with the female gamete to form a single-celled zygote. So the formation of zygote by the fusion of the male and the female gamete, you will call it as the fertilization. So now we are going to discuss in today's class, we will be dealing mostly with the pre-fertilization events. That is, the pre-fertilization event consists of two main components. First one, the gamete formation, which you will call it as the gametogenesis. Okay, the gamete formation or the gametogenesis, and the second one is the gamete transfer. The gamete transfer we would discuss in the next class. Today we will be discussing all the things related with the gametogenesis. What is the male gamete, male gametophyte, all these things of the flowering plants, or the flowering plants you will call them as the angiosperm, which is the most advanced group of plants in the plant kingdom. Several hormones and the structural changes development results in the development of the flower. The inflorescence, in the morphology chapter you studied what do you mean by inflorescence. Racemose inflorescence, cymose inflorescence, you studied all these things. So the flowers are the reproductive part of the flower, and in the flowers the Androecium, which is the male reproductive part, and the gynoecium, which is the female reproductive part. MCQ question, even a 6th standard student knows it very clearly. Androecium is the male reproductive structure and the gynoecium is the female reproductive structure of the flower. Is that clear? I have again made a symbol diagram, yet another beautiful diagram on the screen, everyone. So this green colored portion, you will call it as the sepal. Then you have the pistil, not the pistil, petal, which is actually the corolla. The individual unit of calyx, you will call it as sepals. The individual units of corolla, you will call it as petals. Then you have the stamen. What do you mean by stamen? The individual units of Androecium. The individual units of Androecium is the stamen. The stamen consists of two main parts, that is the anther and the filament. Exactly like this, pistils is the female, or the carpel is the female part of the flower. It consists of stigma, style, and ovary. So inside the ovary, you will have the female gamete. You will have the female gamete, which is the egg or the ovule. And what is the male gamete? Can any one of you tell me which is the male gamete? So now everybody will be telling me the answer as pollen grain. As we move forward, you will identify that pollen grains is not the male gamete, but pollen grains are the male gametophyte. At least 10-12 times repeated MCQ. 10-12 times repeated MCQ question. They will be asking you the simple question like this: which is the male gametophyte? Everybody would give for some other microsporophil, microsporangium and all those things. The male gametophyte is the pollen grain, and the male gamete will be formed inside the pollen tube, which we will be discussing in detail in the upcoming slides. So give me hearts on the screen, and now we are going to move with the male flower and its parts. That is, in this particular module, we will be discussing about Androecium, the individual unit known as stamens, about Microsporangium, and finally we would be dealing with the pollen grain and its structure and how the male gametes are formed inside the flower. Male gametes and male gametophytes, everything, how is it formed inside the flower, and the entire process of formation of, in case of plants, the male gametes, you will call it as the microspores. So the entire process of formation, the of the microspores, you will call it as the microsporogenesis. So simply we can tell that in this particular module, we will be dealing with the entire concept of microsporogenesis. Guys, in case of humans, what is the male gamete? Tell me, what is the male gamete? What is the male gamete? 3 seconds to answer this question. Male gametes in case of human beings. Absolutely, sperms. So the process of formation of male gametes in case of human beings, you will call it as spermatogenesis. You will call it as what? Spermatogenesis. So in this module, we are going to study, since we are dealing with the botany module, we will be studying about the microsporogenesis. So let's move on in detail with a particular thing. That is first Androecium. You all know that Androecium consists of individual units which is known as the stamen. The Androecium consists of individual units called the stamen. The stamen consists of the filament and the anther. So filament is a long and slender stalk-like structure. Okay guys, this is the filament. If suppose we are drawing a long, slender, stalk-like structure is present, and this particular structure you will call it as what? Filament. And there is a bilobed structure. There is a bilobed structure, and this bilobed structure you will call it as what? The anther. This is the bilobed structure. So when you cut this bilobed structure, you will get a structure like this. And in each of this, there will be a sac-like structure inside which you will have the pollen grain. We have to study in detail about it. Okay. So the filament is attached to the thalamus or the petal. Very important question. Very, very important question. Okay. I think yesterday's MCQ polls, I created some polls, 25 polls, and altogether now I think we have completed 35 or 40. So in that, one question was filament is attached to the dash. The answer was thalamus or the petal. Okay. The filament is attached to the thalamus or the petal of the flower. Next, we are going to discuss about Androecium. That is the next part of the Androecium, that is the anther. Already we studied about filament. Filament is a long and stalk-like structure, and anther is the bilobed structure. The filament is attached to the thalamus or the petals. Next, we have to deal with the anther. What do you mean by anther? Anther is a bilobed structure, and each lobe is dithecous. What do you mean by dithecous? Consisting of two theca. I already told you that they will be having a butterfly shaped structure. So each of this is divided into two compartments, right? The right side is divided into two. The left side is divided into two compartments. So they have dithecous in nature and bilobed structure. Look, they are bilobed in nature and they are dithecous. Two theca are there. Theca is separated by a longitudinal groove running lengthways. Okay. These are separated by a long thread-like structure running lengthways. Okay. The microsporangia, inside the microsporangia only you will have the formation of microspores, which is the pollen grains. They are located at the corners, two in each theca. That is one over here, and another over here, another over here. Total four are there. Two in each theca will be there. They further develops to form the pollen sac, which contains the pollen grain, pollen grains. Clear? So Androecium consists of stamen. Stamen consists of two main parts, filament and anther. Anther is a bilobed structure which consists of each lobe having a dithecous condition, consists of two theca. So inside the theca you will have the microsporangium, inside which you will have the development of the pollen grains. So later this microsporangia would develops into the pollen sac. Exactly like this, the filament is a long, slender, stalk-like structure which is attached to the thalamus or the petal. This is the structure of the Androecium. So have in detail about the structure. 1 second, let me explain it to you. So this is a stamen. The stamen consists of two main parts, that is anther and filament. Anther and filament, the long slender stalk-like portion, you will call it as the filament, and the bilobed structure on the top, you will call this as the anther. So the microsporangium will develop later into pollen sac, and this is the complete structure of stamens. Clear? Yes. Next, we are moving on to yet another important topic, that is the whorl layers. The whorl layers of the microsporangium. The whorl layers of the microsporangium, very important. So the microsporangium consists of four main whorl layers. Out of which you will have the formation of epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, and finally you have the tapetum. So epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, tapetum, very important. This is actually the order from outside to inside. The outermost layer is the epidermis and the innermost layer is the tapetum. So very important MCQ question for NEET, repeated MCQ question. They will ask you to arrange the following whorl layers in the inside to outside or outside to inside. So listen the question very carefully and then only answer this question. Outer three layers are protective. So outer three layers are protective and helps in the dehiscence of anther to release the pollen grain. So which are the outer three layers? Which are the outer three layers? That is the epidermis, the endothecium, and the middle layers are protective in nature and helps in the dehiscence of anther to release the pollen grain. And the innermost layer, that is the tapetum, helps in the providing nourishment to the developing embryo, or developing pollen grains. So the outer three layers, epidermis, endothecium, and the middle layers helps in the protection of the pollen grains and also helps in the dehiscence of anther to release the pollen grain. Tapetum helps in providing, tapetum is a nutritive layer, very important statement. Okay, tapetum is nutritive layer that provides nourishment to the developing pollen grain. So inside the tapetum, you will have the young anther will develop a sporogenous tissue inside the microsporangium. I'll show you the diagram for that very clearly. Look at the diagram. This diagram is clearly mentioned in your NCRT. Is that clear? So it consists of an outermost layer. I'll be drawing with different colors. Some of them will get overlaps also, but I'll try to make it clarified for you. Okay, one more time I'll draw. So this particular structure, that is the anther, consists of an outermost layer which is called the epidermis. epidermis. Okay, epidermis. Inner to the epidermis, you will have the endothecium. Okay, the red color is the endothecium. Done, everyone. Inside the endothecium, you will have the middle layers. It's not visible. Yes. This yellow colored structure you will, or not the yellow, the orange colored structure you will call it as the middle layers, and inside you will have the sporogenous tissue. The pink colored is the sporogenous tissue, and outside, just outside the sporogenous tissue, have a black colored layer which is known as the tapetum. What is the function of tapetum? Tapetum provides nourishment to the developing pollen grains. So let's have a look in detail with all these structures. Look, the outermost layer is the epidermis. Inner to the epidermis, you have the endothecium. Then you have the middle layers. Middle layers, endothecium and epidermis together, they will serve the function of providing protection to the pollen grain and also helps in the dehiscence of anther. And the last part, you will have the tapetum. The tapetum is a nutritive layer that helps in the nourishment of the developing pollen grains. Is that clear? Is that clear for everybody? One second. Okay. Then, I already told you guys, if they are asking you in the question if sporogenous tissue is also included in the arrange the order in the correct following sequence, then inside the tapetum only you will have the sporogenous tissue. Please remember this particular point. I'm again remembering you MCQ question for previous year NEET, AIMS, AIPMT, all entrance examinations. Is that clear? Yes. So, this is the diagram, the entire diagram mentioned in your NCRT. Take a screenshot. Those who don't have your NCRT, take a screenshot for this diagram. Very important. You will definitely have a diagram based question based on these diagrams, and I'm sure about it. Okay, definitely you will have a diagram based question. And guys, these are the pollen grains. And whenever guys you are studying a diagram, please in the below of it you will have a particular statements like this. What is A? It is the TS of young anther. B, it is the enlarged view of one microsporangium. Then the nature of the mature dehiscized anther. So suppose they may be giving A, B, C, and they will be asking you to identify the diagram and label its parts. You have been noticing certain questions like that also. Identify the diagram and label with its correct match. If they're asking you, then definitely you have to study this. We cannot say it is out of NCRT because it's something which is mentioned in your NCRT in page number 22 of your NCRT class 12. Done? Let's move on in detail with the topic of microsporogenesis. Microsporogenesis. Yes, guys. So let's continue. Microsporogenesis. What do you mean by microsporogenesis? The process of formation of microspore from pollen mother cell. The process of formation of microspore mother cell. The process of formation of microspores from microspore mother cell or pollen mother cell is known as microsporogenesis. As development occurs inside the anther, we already studied that inside the tapetum you will have the sporogenous tissue. I know you all have studied the chapter cell cycle and cell division, so you know I don't think I have to go with the explanation of meiosis or anything. If I tell you meiosis, it is reduction division. Mitosis, it is equational division. I hope you know all these things. If you don't know, please watch the lecture. Please go to the community page of our channel and then search cell cycle and cell division, meiosis, mitosis. Watch the 2 lectures. Okay, you have to study packaging, diplotin, zygotin, each and everything. It is a direct MCQ coming chapter. Okay, so coming back to this chapter, As development occurs inside the anther, the sporogenous tissue present inside the microsporangium undergoes meiosis to form a microspore tetrad. Each cell of the sporogenous tissue have the capacity to give rise to a tetrad. What do you mean by microspore tetrad? That is, one particular cell will undergo meiosis. It consists of one cell. This cell will undergo meiosis to form two. This two will form what? Four. Clear? Meiosis means it consists of meiosis 1 as well as meiosis 2. Suppose if this particular cell is undergoing meiosis, you studied that it will result in the formation of 4 haploid cells. What? It results in the formation of 4 haploid cells. This was the final sentence of the chapter also. Okay, so each is sporogenous tissue. So one particular cell of the microsporangium, that is a sporogenous tissue, a cell present inside the sporogenous tissue will get enlarged and undergo meiosis to form a microspore tetrad. Will undergo what? Meiosis and form a microspore tetrad. We already studied that the product of meiosis will be 4 haploid cells, and each of these particular tetrad cells you will call it as the potential pollen or the pollen mother cell, or you will call it as microspore mother cell, but we rarely use MMC because in case of megaspore mother cell you use this particular MMC. So potential pollen or pollen mother cell. So as the anther matures, the microspore gets detached from each other and will develop into pollen grain. Look at this diagram. This is the microspore particular cell. It will undergo meiosis 1 to form 2 different cells, haploid, 4 haploid nuclei after the meiosis. So if you don't know this concept, do watch the chapter cell cycle and cell division. The video is available on the community page, also in our telegram group at BioPoint.new. So it results in the formation of pollen grains. So what is pollen grain? Pollen grain is not the male gamete. Pollen grain is the male gametophyte. Repeated MCQ question, and they are having mainly 2 whorl layers. The pollen grain is known as the male gametophyte, and inside the male gametophyte only you will have the male gamete. So the pollen grain represent the 2 male gamete, 2 whorl layers are there. It has an outer layer that is exane, and it has an inner layer which is known as the intane. So the exane is the outermost layer, which is hard layer, made up of a substance called sporopollenin. Guys, the main question for your NEET examination: bacterial cell wall made up of peptidoglycan or murin, then fungal cell wall made up of chitin, exoskeleton of arthropods, chitin. Then they will be asking you plant cell wall made up of cellulose. Like this, they will be asking you the name of the materials. You have studied a number of material names. So from this chapter, you can expect a question, frequently asked question, 20-25 times repeated MCQ question. The exane is made up of a layer or a substance which is called sporopollenin. I'll tell you why it is a frequently asked MCQ, because this particular sporopollenin is one of the extremely resistant, and it can withstand high temperature. It is acidic in nature, so it can withstand any temperature. It can withstand any acid, any alkaline, or any enzyme. Till today, there is no acid, no alkali, no enzyme is found to have destroyed this particular layer of the pollen grain. That is why towards the end of the chapter also, you will study about different seeds and all. And this is why they are used. The pollen grains are used for culturing purposes, because the pollen grains remain viable. Viable. What do you mean by the term viable? V-I-A-B-L-E. Viable. Viable means they can survive. They can survive. So some of them are viable for just 30 minutes. Some of them are viable for months, for years, like this. Okay, we have all those things in the chapter Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants, page number 24. So sporopollenin, important question. Inner layer is made up of thin layer of cellulose and pectin. The outer layer is non-continuous, but the inner layer is continuous layer. Okay, look guys, this is the outermost layer, exane, and it leaves certain pores, and that particular area of the pollen grain which is not covered by the exane, you will call it as a germ pore, because through this germ pore only a pollen tube, a structure called the pollen tube, is going to come out, through which the male gamete is going to get formed. You are going to study all these things in the next class, the next upcoming classes, when we are discussing about pollination, pollen pistil interaction, all these things. So a mature pollen grain consists of two main cells. So this is the diagram taken out directly from your NCRT. Very important. You know that in a plant cell, the main content is the vacuole and the nucleus is pushed to one side. So an asymmetrical spindle is formed there, and a mature, this is the B is the stages showing the mature microspore maturing into a pollen grain. So it consists of a vegetative cell, a large cell, vegetative cell, and a small cell which is actually floating inside this vegetative cell. You will call it as a generative cell. It is a generative cell. So I'll tell you once again, vegetative cell, which is a large one with irregular nucleus, contains a reserve food. Generative cell, which is small and it floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It is actually giving rise to male gamete. It is actually giving rise to the male gametes. Is that clear? During the formation of pollen tube, and I'll teach you, I'll give you with concept videos also. So generative cell is gets divided into two male gamete. So from this onwards, we will study in the next class, on the next lecture of this chapter. I plan to take the whole thing today, but was not able to finish it. So definitely in the upcoming class, we would definitely finish out. Okay? Done, everyone? Yes. So in the next class, we'll be studying about the pistil, then Microsporangium, the formation of female gametes and the female gametophyte with concept maps and everything. So don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to share it with your friends, and do subscribe our wonderful YouTube channel of BioPoint, Stream the World of Bio. So thank you guys. See you in the next class with yet another supremely amazing lecture. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.